Beautiful. We are live streaming on YouTube and such. Let me start the webinar in this little platform. Okay. Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to session 5 of the Conversationalist webinar series. Today's webinar is titled Happiness or Nutrient Density, Holism, Enriching Health in Grass-Fed Beef. We have the special privilege of having Dan Kittredge with us today, the founder and executive director of the Bionutrient Food Association, a nonprofit whose mission is to increase quality in the food supply. Dan, I think, if I have to provide a quick bio, I think he's a strange sort of philosopher. The kind that builds like these nutrient spectrometers, right, that utilize these flashes of light technology to discern the makeup and foundational of materials, right, the relative nutrient density of beef, if you will. But he's also the kind, if you were to corner him, he writes like a poet. He talks as though a Taoist, which I love, and is an overall fun fella. It is going to be an amazingly fun, stimulating, philosophical, and relative conversation, I hope. Dan, my friend, with that, thanks for being with us. Welcome to the Conversationalist.
Well, thank you for having me, Daniel. Yeah, very much looking forward to the conversation. Yeah, so
absolutely. I'm smiling because today is a day that I've been looking forward to. Today is also the day that my family is arriving for the holidays. We're gonna have a lot of fun, but today is also the winter solstice, which means a lot to me. But I know it means a lot to you, and you've written something that you've shared with me earlier this afternoon that actually was really impressive, not in terms of your writing abilities, which you clearly conveyed, but the depth of meaning that the summer solstice has to the human community, I think is not often talked about, right? We have the holiday season, which is important in its own way. We have the coming of the new year, which is obviously important for many reasons. But the winter solstice, if you don't mind, would you mind reading that quickly for us? I mean, it's maybe takes 2 or 3 minutes, but I think it's going to be an apt start to this conversation about happiness, holism, and nutrient density.
Sure, thank you. I appreciate your being willing to be in the flow with me. I did write this earlier today. It's an hour and a half in total effort, so take it for what it is. But I do think every now and then I do write, and I think oftentimes it is better as spoken word. So thank you for the opportunity to record myself speaking what I've written.
Please go ahead. It's our pleasure.
Yeah. All right, here it goes. The solstice. I look forward to this time every year. For me, it is the moment where the insights and energies of the past year and the vision and steps for the next year overlap. I heard many years ago that in the biodynamic tradition, it is called the crystallization period. On the physical plane, at least here in the Northern Hemisphere, it is a time when water, that foundational component in all life, begins to shift from a liquid to a solid form. That which has been ebbing and flowing and carrying us along in its nature is now pausing in that flow and crystallized, allowing us to look more closely at things. With the light and the days and the nights, we've been supported in spending time within and at rest, reconnecting hopefully with the light from within that guides us. With the microbes in the soil, the digestion of the life of the last growing season slows, and we are positioned for the next year, whether well or poorly, and we now have time to consider that next year. For many, much perspective and consideration is occurring from their lives to the culture, the environment, and more. In that spirit, I share what came through me recently. I was in a conversation with a friend last night, and he asked, "What is the theory of change of the BFA?" I know the term theory of change, but I've never really studied it or gone through a process of trying to get one, but shared the following with him. We understand that we are what we eat and that we all have a vibe. The vibration of our being is affected by what we build that being from. On the continuum between dissonant and resonant, how we vibrate affects the world around us. The food for our being must be understood to be more than just the physical material ingested, of course. Our thoughts, feelings, conversations, relationships, the thoughts and energies we expose ourselves to from the world around us. All of these things go to making up our vibe. Foundationally, however, here on the physical plane, we are animals, and our vitality is dramatically governed by what we build our body out of and who with. Never to forget that perhaps only 10% of the cells in our body are human. It is only through that symbiosis with the other kingdoms that we should ever expect the higher levels of coherence in ourselves. What we eat and how we eat it with whom and how it was produced is a powerful thing to come together around, as through doing it better, we actually effectuate the world we all envision. In my mind, all humans have a desire for honor and fulfillment and purpose and meaning, for health and vitality for themselves and their families and communities, for the culture and environment. Increasing quality in the food supply, the stated purpose of the BFA, means supporting all our bodies and relationship with nature so that we may be in a place to more deeply bring that world into being. Those who have been with the organization for some time may appreciate the progress thus far, and as well see that going forward into this next year and beyond, much is in place to support that shift into greater health of all our beings and structures and cycles. More on that in the coming days, but for now, a moment to pause and contemplate and reflect and envision. Thank you all for your engagement and efforts and work in your ways. We all have our visions and mission and purpose, that which invigorates us and feeds us, and those things which leave us feeling less resonant. May we each, in the year ahead, hew more well to that which we are called to in life, and let the rest be like the residue on the soil, digested to feed life in the next year.
Wow, that's powerful.
That was probably longer than 2 or 3 minutes.
No, it was time well spent. The reason, Dan, I wanted to do a webinar with you in this series titled The Conversationalist, where we try to foster deeper conversations, different conversations that a lot of the leaders around this movement, if it could be called that, are having in the public sphere, right? In the public town center, if you will. And what you just wrote and read to us, to me, it's the imbuing of holism. Yes, in the solstice, but in the understanding of nourishment, right? Which I think, if maybe you would agree, I mean, the foundation of nutrient density isn't a number. It's not a thing. It's not soil health, as if soil health in its own sphere, separate from the rest of the animal kingdom and the plant kingdom. Hopefully we stop the reduction and just call it, right, the living kingdom. But it's separate from that kingdom that it matters. Well, it obviously doesn't. In a previous conversation you and I've had, you've mentioned there's 3 aspects to nutrient density that, I'll be honest with you, was not clear when you said it. And so I kind of want to start there, because it was a different place for me to enter this understanding of nutrient density. And then once we go through this, we understand maybe better nutrient density, we can have a bigger conversation about happiness, holism, and how it applies to nutrient density. But okay, so nutrient density, You said to me it's aroma, taste, and I forget the third one. Why don't we dive into that first?
I was referring to a conversation that I had with someone else on a podcast recently, who was very passionately, asking the question, where's flavor involved? Where's aroma involved in nutrient density? Like, what is this number you're working on, the science thing, this data points, like, how does that connect? Where do they overlap? Where do they overlap was kind of what she was saying. And I said, look, if it's not flavor and aroma and how it makes you feel afterwards, it's wrong, right? If it's not those things, if it's not carbon sequestration and ecosystem function and farm viability and quality of life and, health, cultural, spiritual, physical, emotional, on the plane of food, we've been focusing on that which you ingest, whether it's initially a plant or, an animal or what, an herb, a fungus, and what we're saying is a lot of what most of us have to ingest and therefore build our bodies from is foundationally incoherent, or it's not that it's black and white, incoherent, coherent, but it's much less coherent than it could be. And thus, then, therefore, as we build ourselves out of that, so we become, and we should expect our culture and environment to, reflect that. And so, foundationally, the question is, what can I do in this big bad world of ours? And it's literally take responsibility for your vibe, choose that which is less bad next time. And don't just think about food, of course, but how you eat it, who you eat it with, and all the other things you take in, the media, the social media, the conversations, the relationships, the work. What are the things in your life that leave you feeling energized, inspired, coherent, vibrationally, pleased, and what are the things that cause you to feel otherwise? And I think organizing around the physical plane, organizing around something tangible that everybody does every day, that everybody spends money on, and money drives the world. Like, let's just start with food and look at how that, effectively is everything. So everybody's got their lens, everybody's got their story, their mission, vision. This is the one that I came to after a bunch of questing, a number of years ago now. And I think it's anyway.
No, I like it.
Answered your question and doesn't go beyond any other questions you may have. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I don't want to stay here long. I don't. I think if anybody is interested in what you're going to say in brief, and I hope you do keep it brief, there's tons of podcasts. In preparation for this webinar today, I listened to 2 of them. I just typed your name into Apple Podcast, and I listened to 2 of the random ones that you've done over the past couple of years. And you go over your story well, but at a high level, you grew up on a farm, organic farm, veggie farm, ANOFA farm, etc. Traveled farm, emerged in this consciousness of what you were trying to do. You now run your own farm. And you've been working on BFAs, right? That's the Bionutrient Food Association. Talk a little bit about your journey, if you will, anything that you think pertains to the greater conversation of holism, nutrient density, and happiness, but also correlate, what are you doing today that relates to this? What is the BFA doing? What is this I can't even say it, spectrometer little gadget thing, right? Like, why do we need technology? Let's just spend 5 to 10 minutes here to kind of build the foundation for the rest of the conversation.
Boy, I'll see if
I want your whole life, Dan, right here. Could you just put it right here for us?
I always ask the question, why?
There you go.
And from a very young age, as soon as I could talk, apparently I always did. And it was not always pleasant for the adults around me, but finally I got old enough to get out in the world and go looking, and found the answer and came back with what to do also. Long story, politics, economics, activism, stuff, studied a bunch of different, fields in college. Went on walkabout, ended up in the Himalayas a couple times. As I say, getting my master's in the science of the East. I think we've got a very good science of the physical plane here in the West, quote unquote. But we also in the West understand that 96% of reality is not on the physical plane. So what are we doing about the rest of the 96%? And my understanding is that there's a cultural tradition, many of them, which speak in a very scientific way to the rest of reality. And so it was, graced, blessed, my own damn, just like not letting go until I figured it out, at a young age, was, had some of that verified for me. Not only studied and practiced, but I was verified. So that's where I come from. Is the answer to the question that I came to was love. Why should I do anything? Because love. You want to feel better. You want to experience life more fully. You don't want to do what you don't want to do. You want to do what you do want to do. And what is it? Foundationally, it's the vibration of of resonance, of harmony, of attraction, of unity. And it's corollary if you're existing not in the unitary state, but in a differentiated state. The binary is fear. So love and fear, dark and light, attraction, repulsion, pleasure, pain. And so I said, how do I get to feeling that way more? And I thought if my body was in a better shape, I could ground those energies more well. And I realized that as I grew up on an organic farm and had a pretty good, foundational upbringing in the physical plane, and still my body couldn't handle all of that. And I was young and judgmental and arrogant and, dismissive of other people and what they do with their lives. And I said, if I can't handle that vibe and my body's incoherent, then therefore my body's incoherent and my body's more coherent than others, I shouldn't judge others for not holding that vibe. I'm not sure if that follows. But it's foundational to what I'm trying to accomplish with the BFA. I use the metaphor of music, and perhaps that's a good way to explain this. If anybody's been to an elementary school band concert, they know what dissonance sounds like, feels like. If they've been to a beautiful a cappella choir, listen to the bird song, whatever it is, heard the harmonics, 4 voices maybe sounded and a 5th note is heard. The harmonics, I think of the physical plane as 1 octave. You look at the piano keyboard, you got 8 octaves, low, low C, C, high C. There's different octaves. Who knows what dark matter and dark energy are? From the science of the East, they propose it's consciousness. And it, is grounded through our physical bodies to the degree our physical bodies are vibrating coherently. The language of music explains this quite well. So I think the science is actually pretty good there too, to back this up. If you look into biochemistry and, biophysics and all those kinds of things. Basically, when we eat, build our bodies out of things that are not vibrating coherently, when we don't have in our food those things which we need to make our DNA, which is a vibrating resonant frequency, or it makes it poorly, we vibrate like that elementary school band concert. We can't tune into our higher natures. And so we look across the planet in culture at, dysfunction, dis-ease, disharmony, whatever you want to call it. I would suggest that comes to some large degree from those who are creating those systems. And we are all part of systems that may be incoherent as we are incoherent. And so foundationally, there's nothing else you can do besides build that coherence in yourself. And to a large degree, that comes from food. And if food out there is of poor quality, then what are people going to do? If we don't solve this food issue, we shouldn't expect culture to be solved and the environment to be solved, because we are insufficient for the task. And so that's basically been the vision and mission of the BFA, is to increase quality in the food supply. If we can figure out a way to make it so that everything available for everybody is better next year and better the year after that and better the year after that, that will effectuate those results in ourselves and then in our effects in the world. And so that's been our mission. And For the past 5 years, we've been working on this project with the spectrometer, and that's what people know about is the spectrometer, but there's more to it. The idea is basically give people the ability to flash a light at a carrot, milk, rice at the grocery store, farmer's market, and say better, worse. And we've got this one right now, which is, it's real, it's around the world, it works on 10 crops to some basic degree. And so if we give people the ability to make choices based on their self-interest, they will, is our hypothesis, especially if they understand that it connects to the environment and other things also. And so we've done this thing where we've not only built a meter, but we built a data set to calibrate that meter to, so we can say what better and worse are to some basic degree. And then finally, we connected that to management practices and causal dynamics and environmental conditions and fertility programs and genetics and epigenetics and all that stuff. So we can go and we can say, these causal factors correlate with this soil level, minerals, carbon, biology, and these nutrient levels, this crop, and this farm viability, and this pest and disease resistance. And you can choose it or not. And it doesn't necessarily connect to local or organic or permaculture or regenerative. It connects to actually how it was grown. And so if we can bring market force through a grassroots community effort around food, we have all the power we need to create the world we want to create. So let's focus on solutions. Let's not fight stuff, right? That's fear. Pushing against is fear. Solutions is coming together. That's love. That's pleasure. Do what you feel inspired by. Don't do what you are fighting. I don't know. You can go all kinds of different levels. Was that 10 minutes or less?
That was beautiful. And entirely concise. I warned everybody in the introduction. Half of that was philosophical, and I was struggling to keep up, and the other half was entirely mathematical and scientific. And I also was equally trying to
struggling to keep up.
Yeah, struggling to keep up.
You gave me a time window. I should go more slowly, like when I was reading. When I was reading, it was like slowly, and actually probably is a better way to listen to me. Yeah.
No, I think anyway is better is the best way to listen to Dan Kittredge. Well, let's go here. So the first time you and I ever chatted, I don't know if you remember this phone call. It was a mutual friend of ours connected us, and we just got on the phone and chatted for like 2 hours or something outrageous.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a couple moments in my life where I was on the phone and my life changed. The first of which I was on the phone with Alan Savory, and I was talking about keyline design and things. And we were talking about the problems we were having on his farm. And Alan, I'll never forget this. He goes, I know the issue, Daniel. And I was like, what? And he's like, you're just bad at managing. And it was so true, because my mind was focused on technology and reducing the equation, complicated, not complex, hard, not soft, right? I was focused on something that's very human, right? Yeah. We need more trees. We need more grasses. We need more organic matter.
It's colonized.
It colonized. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. It's the colonized mindset. It's a paradigm, right, of control. Right. I like this. But it was simple. I was just bad at managing, right? I was not a good manager of cattle. I was not a good manager of grass species. I was not a good orchestra conductor, if you will. And it was something so simple, so benign, so humdrum, if you will. I mean, it's just. It was beautiful. Well, anyways, I bring that up to say this, in your and I's conversation, something similar happened in a totally different realm of my professional life. You and I were talking about nutrient density in cows, and I was confused the difference in terminology between nutrient richness and nutrient density, which maybe today we can get into in a little bit. And you made the comment, you said, well, Daniel, it kind of sounds like your cows are happier than most. And I paused. And
you were talking about their families. You were talking about how they're all living together in family.
And you heard happiness, right? And I was stumbling over my terminology of nutrient richness, nutrient density, healthy grass-fed and finished beef, that sort of stuff. And you heard happiness. And so that's really where this webinar was born, in this moment where I realized that, what we were trying to do was something. I never understood what that something was. And ever since that conversation, whenever anybody asks us what kind of beef we raise, I say happy beef. Happy beef. What kind of beef do you want to eat? And there's chemicals, there's science here, just like in true Kittredge fashion. There's philosophy and science. So cool. Oops, I just dropped my pen. Anyways, get into that science. What do you mean when we're thinking about healthy, nutrient dense food? Where is happiness, and why does humanity care? Why should humanity care? about whether or not cows are happy, soil is happy, grass is happy, plants are happy, pests, maybe. I don't know. You get into that.
Well, you know what stress hormones are? You know what the biochemical markers of, heart disease and things like that are in a human body, right? I mean, why would you want to ingest that? Why would you want to ingest the flesh or the meat from an animal that, has inflammation markers to the roof? That's only going to be basically building your body out of that.
So you're saying that that's transferable.
Transferable. It's the same compounds. We're animals.
I think that's the paradigm for me. I mean, intrinsically, you and I knew this 2 years ago when we were talking together, but still, it's still a hard thing to convey to the general public. So what you're saying, let me reiterate to confirm, you're saying that just as though we like organic food because it's not treated and it doesn't consume whatever, let's call it a pesticide, in the same way that humans want to consume organic food, we should be wanting to consume food with a hormone and endocrine system that is also balanced, not tainted, not taxed, not stressed.
Healthy, flourishing, vital, vibrant, resilient. Anything. I like this. I always have started my courses with this. If your cows were if flies were laying eggs on the back ends of your cows, and those eggs were hatching, and the back ends of those cows are being eaten alive by maggots, you would say something's wrong in that animal, right? You probably wouldn't, keep that milk and put it in the bulk tank. You probably wouldn't slaughter that steer and feed it to your children or sell it. But we do that with potatoes. They're being eaten alive by a Colorado potato beetle. That's being eaten alive by larvae. When you have a plant that is healthy, it is exactly that. The things biochemically, nutrients that make it healthy are the things that make it indigestible for insects, right? I mean, it's the same thing. I don't know if you've ever bought like an organic chicken from the grocery store.
I try not to, but
I don't. But I go to places where people have done, and you put it in the same cast iron kettle, and you stick it in the pot, and you stick it in the oven for a couple hours at 325, and you take it out, and like the meat doesn't hold together, right? It doesn't actually. It's not flesh. It's just this it's like dissipating.
Not in a good way. You're not saying it's tender.
Marbling in beef, actually.
Yeah.
The thing that makes beef fall apart is exactly those deep systemic, this animal will die soon. Like it's a human, it's got a disease, it'll need to be managed soon. All those precursors to that disease are, literally marbling in beef. That's what it is, it seems like. So that's not a good thing, right? Anyway, it's a much deeper conversation, but if nutrient density is not soil health, plant health, flavor, aroma, these things, then we don't have the right definition. Foundationally, nutrient density is a concept, and we're trying to, for as long as possible, have that conversation around nutrient density be as empirical as possible and say, it's not a binary, you are or are not, you are organic or not, regenerative or not, local or not. It's a continuum. You're the 10th percentile or the 40th percentile or the 80th percentile. And until we define that percentile, until we define the continuum, we can't say what is and what isn't. And it's never is or isn't. It's always somewhere in the continuum.
Makes sense.
So nutrient density hopefully is a conversation that we can, coalesce around and choose our labels, choose our meters, choose our, certifying agencies or not. Ideally, we keep it in the commons. Ideally, we give everyone the ability to assess directly for themselves, to the metaphor of, physics and metaphysics and those kinds of things. I use the metaphor of religion, and I say, is it best for there to be an intermediary between you and the divine, telling you what the divine says, or is it best to have direct perception? And the same way with an organic label, that priest is telling you this has met his or her standard. What's the nature of the priest? Just because they say that, or what's the nature of their religion at this moment? To what does that really mean? Versus, the spectrometer is just a stand-in for your tongue and your nose and your being. it'll never be as good, but at least it's a way to frame the conversation around these things. So
that makes sense. Yes. So much to dive into. I mean, one of the things I think I really feel myself wanting to dive into this whole marbling and grass-fed beef, because we're kind of lying to everybody who's here if we don't talk a little bit about grass-fed beef, because I know that's in the title.
Yeah.
Do you think it's possible if we dive into this for 5 to 10 minutes? What do you mean marbling in grass-fed beef is the start of that decay period? Is that what you would say?
When you've got a fatty liver, when you've got, the biomarkers, obesity, all those inflammation, when inflammation is high enough in the body for long enough, and it can't process through all those toxins, starts to build them up in the body. That's when people's bodies start to look not well. And that's what a corn-fed cow is. And that's
what you're saying the marbling indicates. The marbling indicates that there's been fat and inflammation in the body to such a degree, extent, and time that it's starting to be manifest within the body, not just around.
As an example of the kinds of things that we're finding, the stress, the hormonal imbalance, the biochemical imbalance, all these kinds of things seem to have markers in the plant or animal. And part of defining nutrient density should be to understand all of that and begin to say, these are the things that are good for you. These are the things that are bad for you. These are the things that are symptomatic of other things like animal welfare, quality of life,
right?
Plant welfare, quality of life. Why we prioritize animals over plants is just, that's religiosity, right? That's just, who the hell are we to say that animals are, the life of an animal is more valuable than the life of a plant? Life is life. Quality of life is the point. Ecosystem function is the point. Whatever. I'm not going to start on that rant, but to the point of beef, as we look more deeply into the science, we seem to be finding these things, and that's the purpose of the whole project. Is not to say this is the answer, but to say it sure looks like all these data points are there, and who has systematically populated an intelligent enough data set to be able to say things with confidence. Because if we're going to be using the Western rational scientific framework, which I argue is a wonderful, lingua franca for this whole process, then we got to build the data sets. We got to build the data, sets and populate them. And so that's what we're doing. For the past 5 years, we've built a prototype meter. We've built, definitions of variation. We've connected that to management, and now we're working to actually define nutrient density. And so we don't know what that is. We think we need to be looking at many more compounds than we have. We've got the literature that we're using to base our perspective from. We're, lining up 200 farms from around the planet to send in 3 samples, 3 steaks from, 3 separate animals, and the feces from when they're on the field, and the forage and the soil, and document the management practices, and, a bunch of steaks off the shelf from the more CAVO confined edge of the spectrum, and then populate that data set and then say, what do we see? And engage thoughtful people in making these statements. So from what I understand, this marbling thing is one of those many pieces. The omega-3, omega-6 ratio people have heard about, there's all kinds of stuff out there.
Yeah. I like to keep the questions to the end, but so far we have questions coming in based upon marbling, because just to hear the word marbling, and maybe perhaps potentially this is not something we consider as potentially that great, I think it's causing people to stir a little bit. And I think this is a very good thing. And so I'm gonna ask 2 questions from our attendees here, our guests. So I'll interrupt the flow of the webinar for it. I think it's important. Cody asks one question. It seems to be a clarification question. He says, you talked about that organic chicken that fell apart in the oven. Is that to say the store-bought chicken is of poor quality, or are we talking specifically about organic chickens in generality?
Well, I don't know that I've eaten a non-organic chicken from the store in a while, so I couldn't speak to those. But my point was about the steak, and the steak falling apart in your mouth, and that experience of it not having structure. I don't know. give me a nice thigh of a chicken and I want to taste it, I want to chew it. There's a process that like gives me that chicken like experience. And you take a thigh off of,
I see.
the store, and it doesn't provide that. It's different. It's pulpy, and so
that makes sense.
Maybe it's like that with the marbling and the beef. There's something about structure. It doesn't have to be totally stringy, but we're wired with these, capacities for discernment, our noses and our tongues and our whole beings that are profound. And, get the machines and the meters and the science out of the way. The objective is to figure out how to sense. And your body is the most profound sensor you'll ever have access to, and reconnect with it. But maybe I digress. Yeah.
I can, no, it's not a digression at all. I think, so to substantiate, to clarify what you're saying, there's a difference between food falling apart unnecessarily, unhealthily, unorderly, and truly having a marvelous, tasteful, aromatic food experience in the nourishing community, right? Of the people, all like, these are two different separate things.
How about, the tomato from the grocery store in January, the tomato off the vine? Ever bought store-bought potatoes? I
hear you.
Onions, an onion that you grew has got a structure to it that one of those store-bought ones doesn't. I mean, there's a thing, it's real. And if you don't know, you don't know. But we're trying to come at it from the scientific lens. And we understand it sure looks like it connects to all kinds of other things. So yeah, I've had the privilege of growing up on a farm, on a homestead, and I have context for these things, in my time and place and generation. I'm privileged. I'm highly privileged.
Yeah.
To have that.
Our daughter, my wife and I, our oldest, she's 4. She was born on the farm, has grown up on the farm all 4 years, and we have a garden every year. And she loves tomatoes. She goes out, picks tomatoes. It's her favorite veggie or fruit, if you will. Summer veggie, let's just call it that. Anyways, we gave her a tomato the other day, maybe a month or two, and it was a store-bought tomato. It was kind of something we don't do all the time, but we do. Whatever. And she starts eating it, and she goes, "Mom," she has a horrible look on her face. She goes, "Mom, what is this?" and my wife, in her beauty, is like, "Oh, Elowen, it's a tomato. Just eat it." And Winnie is just like, "Oh, it's horrible. I don't." And she wouldn't eat it. She absolutely refused to eat it.
An animal.
Exactly.
She hasn't lost her animal instinct. Respect that.
Yeah.
That's why kids don't eat fruits and vegetables, because they're no good. They know better.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
No, it's entirely true. So what you're saying is, to conclude this, because I want to move on. I feel it necessary to move on. I actually really want to stay, but that's okay. To conclude this, what you're saying is, humans, as we develop, or maybe reclaim, so go backwards, that animalistic instinct, our instinct to food, our indigenousness to food, nutrient density comes to the fore, not in terms of numbers or science, although that might help. It comes to the fore in aroma and taste and experience and community and the wonderful chemical lineage of the food. You need to call it nutrient
density. All those things are synonyms. Yeah. I say, God, science, nature, love, universe are synonyms. All these things are synonyms. Flavor, whatever. It doesn't really matter what we call it. Let's try not to call it anything. Let's try not to pin it down too much, but let's agree to have a common space where we're respectful and collaborative and sharing. And I think that's most powerfully what we've been able to do behind the scenes with this whole meter project, is build that framework globally that serious interlocutors of all sorts are plugging into, because it actually works. It helps get results. That's where we're at right now in life, in this whole process. We need different results, and people are ready to plug into something that works. And so we've been trying to build that framework.
It's powerfuful. It's entirely powerful. There's one question here about Wagyu beef, and I won't ask it directly, but it's the system and the philosophy that both is within and also contains your system that you've elucidated so well seems to me to be painting the picture that what modern society sees as a delicacy, that what modern society sees as an extreme convenience and therefore it is a virtuous in some way is kind of the total wrong way of seeing it, in the sense that what its delicacy is actually tainting, right? And what we see as convenience is actually ruining the experience of what food is doing in our bodies, right? A quick meal is not a meal, right? You're saying there's some more totality and holism needed there to describe what a meal is in its full sense. Is that what you're saying?
It's not about whether it's a meal or not. It's about whether a meal of junk or a meal of food. You know, what are you building your body out of? You are ingesting constantly with your thoughts and your conversations and your food. You are, you know, it's a feedback loop. It's a constant feedback loop. And so what's the nature of that which you're building yourself from and propagating forward? And you have, you know, you have will and consciousness to utilize or not to the degree you so choose, but understand that is your power. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's a deeper conversation, which is great that you're, you know, I love that you're
interested in it,
aiming straight at it. This is great.
Interested in talking to people smarter than myself in it, because I struggle to do these conversations. I struggle to lead them because I get lost in them, in the sense that I would love to be an attendee, and I struggle just to sit as an attendee in my head, because that's where I want to be. But I also need to lead the conversation, so I'll keep it moving. Let's talk a little bit, if we can. Let's reduce this very holistic conversation that we've had into some individual parts. I feel like it's necessary. Nutrient density in the soil, right? That's where my mind wants to go. I'm a farmer. We run a 400-acre farm here. We manage thousands of acres of farms across the Mid-Atlantic region. Healthy soil seems to be a foundational cornerstone to raising or growing nutrient-dense things to be consumed by wildlife, by life itself, by humans, whatever it is, beef or corn or whatever it would be, nutrients in the soil microbiota. Talk to me about that process a little bit. So plants photosynthesize. What is nutrient density? How does this relate to the photosynthesis of plants, and how does it get to our plate?
The answer or the process?
Whatever you think we
need. The answer
need.
is it's not soil, it's microbes, and they are everywhere, not just in the soil. But the answer is also, the process is also microbes. So, you know, I say your plants are green. They have chloroplasts in them that make, you know, sugar. We know about this whole process. You know, we know about the oxygen going out of the atmosphere. What some of us don't know is that the sugar, in large part in nature, gets injected into the soil and also out through the leaves to feed microbes, because plants, like animals, you know, can't digest their food. They've been evolved by microbes to feed them and reproduce them and distribute them across the landscape. That's what animals and plants have been, who they've been evolved by to do what is to, you know, from an evolutionary biological perspective, if you want to look at it that way. It's only when our microbiomes are functioning well that we're functioning well. It's the same with the plant. So the plant makes sugar to feed the microbes. Microbes go out and digest the environment. It's really, really sophisticated. The plant sucks in microbes and takes off their cell walls and sucks out some of their protoplasm and puts some new elements in there and modulates their DNA. They get spit out as a different species, right? I mean, what actually is going on in plants, in animals, in life? Wow. Constant evolution, you know, genetic dark matter. You hear about that one? Like the 95% of the DNA is dark, is like not used as junk DNA. They call it junk DNA, right? Yeah. No. It's a constantly modulated dynamic. And so what I say is, doesn't matter what you're growing, it matters how healthy the microbiome is. And the microbiome needs certain things to exist. It needs air to breathe, it needs water to drink, it needs food to eat, it needs minerals to build its body out of, and it itself must be there. You must have the foundational species and families and genera, et cetera, present. But as a farmer, gardener, you know, homesteader, caretaker, however you see yourself in relationship with the land, from my perspective, the more well you're able to see what life needs to flourish more and provide that, the more it does. And that means carbon sequestration, it means ecosystem function, it means decreased cost of production, it means increased economic viability, it means decreased pest and disease pressure, it means flavor, aroma, shelf life, health, coherence. So what we said was, looks like this food quality thing is a nice high ground to organize around. Like it connects all these different things. We can actually organize the market around it, which is the way the world works right now. So if we want to move forward, we have to use the energy where it's at. And so that's what nutrient density is. It's, what causes it. It's the more well that microbial ecosystem is functioning, the more the sophistication of the biochemistry is able to be realized, the more the inherent genetic potential of the plant can be manifest. And it's an iterative, evolving, process. And what we're saying is we've defined variation amongst copper and zinc and calcium, potassium and sulfur and boron and antioxidants and polyphenols, within carrots, within cucumbers, within wheat, within blueberries. It's 5x or 10x, from this carrot to that carrot, 50x or 200x, depending on the compounds you're looking at. Nutrient variation exists across the board. No one's defined nutrient density as in like the polyphenols, antioxidants, and terpenoids, and the proteins, and the lipids, and the minerals. Let's see if we can build some kind of a baseline to say roughly better, roughly worse. And we're starting with beef because it's the crop globally with the largest market. More dollars spent on beef than any other thing. It's the crop, if you want to think of it that way, globally with the largest ecological footprint. So how it's done, if we can shift how it's done, that will have the most powerful impact of anything, milk or rice or cucumbers. So we've defined variation, we've got a basic meter, we've connected all these things to management. So we've got an open data platform. Now we're saying, now let's define nutrient density. And we hope that by the end of 2022, we've got a basic definition, which is our first. It's going to be an iterative process. It's not a final binary, it's an evolving process. Maybe we'll only have red, yellow, green for 3 years, and then we'll be able to have 80, 75, 70, 65. It's not us per se, the BFA, it's the community coalescing around this. So, yes, we're focusing on the science, the labs, the numbers, the meters, the software, the app, the whatever, the open source, but really deeply it's about culture and consciousness. So
I love that. It's about culture and consciousness. I really like that because and correct me if I'm wrong, looking at nutrient density and creating the spectrometer that actually reads the final good, right? So just to confirm, you have that little device that
good, bad, medium, not just good, bad.
Right, good, bad, medium. It tells you the where you are relative on the spectrum.
Yeah,
we're looking at the final end, right? We're looking at a steak and not the living being of the cow. Is that what I'm understanding? Directly. They correlate, obviously, right? But what I'm saying is we're looking at final end goods. So that the user of the spectrometer, he's at the farmer's market and he has 2 farm market stands, both market gardens, they both have carrots, and he wants to know which one to buy. He pulls out the spectrometer. Is that the idea? That's what you're saying is the education of the taste. Maybe one day the human species doesn't need the spectrometer, right? We could just look at it, we can taste it and be like, oh, that's a nutrient dense carrot, right? That has community to it, that has happiness to it, that has a life cycle that I want to participate with, and that I want to participate with me. We can do that with our mouths, but for now we're doing it with the spectrometer. Is that what the science of the technology is yielding today at BFA?
Right. So, whether everybody needs to have one or not, I use the example of, Stonyfield and Organic Valley and Horizon. You got 3 kinds of organic milk to choose from the grocery store. Take 50 people across the country, have them each go buy what's in the grocery store, flash the light at it, get the reading, post it on Facebook. I'm not going to put any money on, any of them. Some of, each one has 3 different brands, right? So whatever. But if it was public information, which one was better? Usually in the last month.
Right.
Would people make decisions accordingly? I predict yes.
we hope yes. The future of our species and of all of the interrelating species, which is all of life in our Earth, I think depend upon it. So
well, we can get great deals about it. I'm just saying the first 2 percentile of the market. That's what the industry trade groups are tracking this kind of stuff. They'll pick it up soon enough. Hey, we don't even want to embarrass anybody. We'll keep it, relatively low to the ground. work with these different companies, support them in working with their growers to change their management practices. We don't want people embarrassed. We want people empowered. It's not about taking down the bad guy. It's about
beautiful.
The entire supply chain being improved. I've said this a couple of times. I will be happy when, Burger King and McDonald's are fighting over their claims about the quality of the beef in their burgers. Like, why the hell not?
Absolutely.
Why not?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's food, people eat it. Let's support them in being able to fight each other over that. Right? It's not about the elite. It's not about any of these things. It's not about North America. It's about the global commons, really. But for the North American context or the Western, context, perhaps some of these words are more appropriate. But
yeah, that's interesting. That's really interesting. And so earlier, when I asked about the nutrient density, what is it? What does plants and soil have to do? All of that. I think if I remember correctly, you brought up the principles of biological systems: air, water, food, things like that.
Yeah.
I'm using your terminology there. I think I've listened to you speak at Groundswell, I think in like 2018 or 2017. It was online. Yeah. You brought up the principles of biological systems, and I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. And the point is happiness. Let's kind of take the next couple of minutes. Let's bring this back home. Let's make some tangible connections here, and then maybe open it up for some more questions. Air, water, food, items like this. Nicole Masters, in her book For the Love of the Soil, she talks about it. Underground livestock, the terminology the regenerative movement throws around. She might even throw it around in her book. It's a brilliant term. The microbiota. You changed my life just now when you said that plants produce sugars for microbiota. Something I never really put together. Plants feed cows, but plants are really feeding the microbiota in the cows as much as they're feeding this microbiota in the soil. It's brilliant. I think that's what I'm taking home from this. I didn't expect that, but it's what I'm going to take home from this. But let's talk about happiness. So we have the principles of biological systems. We have the understanding of our soil livestock, right? This microbiota in soil, and we also now understand that it's everywhere. Happiness. Can you have a nutrient dense, from a reductionistic sense, so a soil that is living and fine, and it has microbial activity going on, and you spray some lime on it once a year because that's what the NRC has told you to do, but you might not have happy cows running on it, right? They might have high stress. You might be overly weaning or weaning at all, castrating inappropriately or improperly. You might have external factors bringing stress on the system that reduces the happiness. My question for you is, can the eradication of one of the aspects of the interrelated wholes, happiness, and the other interrelated wholes and dependent wholes would be air, water, food, etc., presence of life would be another one I would argue. Can the eradication of happiness ruin the system? How important is happiness? I'm going to stop asking all these questions. That last one is I like the best. I'm going to interject.
No. I got it. I got an answer.
You got it? You got it? Okay, cool.
Sure. Yeah.
Good.
Good one. But no one's asked it to me quite that way before. Happiness is a state of being. It's a vibration, which is a natural outgrowth of coherence. It's the point about love and fear and unity and duality. Happiness is a vibration, as experienced by our physical form, or it's one of its subtler layers, but it certainly has biochemical corollaries in hormones and things like that. And that comes from this complete reality. So if you have plants that aren't healthy, they aren't experiencing happiness. Their biochemistry their vibration is just the same as ours, and the same as the the microbes and the cows. It's we have the left brain, the right brain, the science, the feeling. We have the spirit, we have the sense, the presence. I mean, various people use different words for it. I call it energy. You can call it whatever the hell you want. That's what I'm in it for, right? To feel better. Come on. we all want that. We all have that deep sense of pleasure and fulfillment in our families, in our communities, in our lives personally, in our bodies, in our emotional life. I mean,
it seems also a need, though, right? So like foresters are now understanding the microbial or the mycelial, I should say, communities where when a tree is lonely, it dies, right?
Yeah.
Like trees can die of loneliness. I've seen cows, right, separated from the herd. They were healthy and now they're gone. They're dead, right? Out of nowhere, this separation anxiety, the stress.
Animals, look at what, pigs do. Look at what, wolves do. Look at what rabbits do. Look at what dogs do, cats. Other mammals, other primates, they're affectionate, they're touching, it's connection. It's the mycelial web. It's the web of experience. It's not just the physical plane, it's the energy, the subtler vibrations of it. And, we're communicating right now through a electronic medium, and, perhaps at a certain level in our own beings where we can connect energetically from a distance, but I'm sure it would be much different if we were in proximity. And yeah, it's one of the profound lessons of this time is the importance of that, I think.
Yeah.
And we'll see how we learn it and who learns it, how and when, and all that. But I think we're animals. We need to be in right relationship with nature, community, family. And if we don't have it, all the good food in the world is not going to do you much. Maybe that answers your question.
Brilliantly. I think in conclusion here, summing up all these different aspects, to me, what I learned outside of the microbials being everywhere, not just in the soil, when we're thinking about nutrient density in agriculture, the production of nourishment, I think the main take home for me is that nutrient density is many things, but holistically, if we had to pick it very simply, it would be coherence. It's community, it's coherence, it's happiness, which is a state of being. It's a vibration, going back to the very beginning thing you wrote about the solstice.
I think, the regenerative conversation's been about carbon, but people are starting to realize it's not really about carbon. It's about results. It's about ecosystem function. Perhaps the conversation on nutrient density has been about minerals and compounds. And what you're proposing is it's about consciousness. I'll take that. Sure. I've always thought that was my second act. This whole nutrient density thing is just an opening salvo to get the dynamics in place where we can actually seriously engage that process of deepening consciousness. That's my objective. There's nothing more pleasurable than love, and that, call it what you want to call it.
Yeah, and even if you want to be very humdrum or benign about it, a really good steak and a really good carrot, and I mean good in a very holistic, unbelievably nutrient-rich sense, is unbelievably good.
It gives you
good
pleasure and then vitality.
Yes.
And if shared with those you love in conversation and with time, is a deeply nourishing process.
Nutrient density is about nourishment via coherence. I could just keep.
Just don't label it, as far as I'm concerned.
No, well, it's so nebulous. Like, what is coherence, right?
We've succeeded. I've succeeded in talking about it for 10 years and still having it not mean anything specific. So that's I guess that does make me a philosopher, doesn't it?
That's exactly true. Let's there's one question I haven't asked in the docket here, and I'll ask it real quick to kind of conclude our time together. We got a couple more minutes. Jake is asking, and I'll just read the question out loud. How much would the way in which an animal is harvested manifest in the spectrometer? If the animal leads a healthy and happy life, but spends the last day in a long trailer, right? We know the process. Does that
skew? Hormones are stress hormones. Fear is fear. There's hormones in the biochemistry, the tension of the muscles.
So what you're saying is you could raise a cow for 3 years in the happiest, most unbelievably marvelous environment you could possibly do. Best case scenario in all ways. You put it in a trailer, it rains, it hits the side walls, it's slippery, it falls, it stands up, it gets shocked to get out. What are you telling me? Dan says what? Have we lost it?
5%, 7% out of your 100. How many were there going and walking into the back of the trailer? If you were at 98, then you're still at 93 or 92.
But it has an impact. To me, 5 to 7% is massive.
Especially when, what you're receiving in most crops is 15. right? Or 20 or 25. That's where
that's the long-term stress of the system. That's what you're saying. It is
no, that's the state of the market right now.
Got it. Okay.
Between horrible and amazing, there's a continuum, and we can roughly say between 15 and 30 is where the peak of the graph is.
Got it.
So I don't know what the numbers are. It's not mine to say, but the point is everything is a thing and has an effect, and it all matters.
In the relationship of all.
Is real. What are you going to say? So,
yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. It's these conversations that to me make me want to farm more. And just I don't know. I want to go out there and sing to my cows. Maybe you'll come by the farm one day. And
but the real point is what comes to you is the thing. So if this person asking the question is what is about the trailer and that slaughter, like that's your antenna system telling you this is important. If your antenna system is telling you I want to go sing to my cows, and get the hell out there. Yeah. You know, we have this profound sense of perception and engagement. We're co-creators, right? I mean, absolutely. Our antenna system, our vibration, we're vibrating the good crystal. We're constantly, perceiving the vibrations from around us and then choosing how to respond and propagate back out. And so when these things come to you, that's your indigenous self, if I can say that.
Wow. Well, I love it. Dan, we could talk all day. Yes. Maybe one day we will. Thank you for in person. Yeah. Really quickly, provide how people can get in contact with you if you want such a thing to happen. Your website, social handles.
I guess there's social media stuff. I don't know them all, but bionutrient.org, bionutrientinstitute.org. For the general organization or the science work, soilandnutrition.org for all of our conferences and the recordings there. We've had an amazing suite of people carrying wisdom who we've recorded every single one of them, and they're all there. You can find that on YouTube, I think. Tons of content, ways to sign up, engage, join, reach out. It's all there. And it's an ecosystem. It's a community. The more of us that I hope if I may be so presumptuous as to say, I hope we are some sort of a nucleating structure around which, around which things coalesce to the spirit of the crystallization moment in the beginning of the presentation. We're in that crystallization moment, how it works with clouds and water vapor. Right. They need something to nucleate around, and then that molecule forms. And so I hope the intention and the work of the organization can serve that effect going forward. Amazing.
Well, Daniel, thank you for being here with us. In a couple of weeks, right after Christmas, we will be hosting Fred Provenza on a very similar subject. If this is a conversation that you've enjoyed, I encourage you sign up for that one. Fred Provenza will be talking about, in a very similar sense, on happiness and nutrient density, but the role of families within herds and the understanding of mob grazing and mob type activities of herds. Are they related or are they not? It'll be a very similar conversation with a brilliant man, and I know a good friend of Dan as well. So
advisor in our project. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And you just did a webinar with him that I was on as an attendee that I absolutely loved. And one other individual that I'm forgetting the name of, maybe back in October, about nutrient density in beef.
Stefan?
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yep. And it was amazing. You guys can check that out. I'm assuming on your YouTube or your one of the websites that you just threw out at us. Well, anyways, great content. Everybody have an amazing solstice. Have a great holiday season and new year. And we'll see you guys right afterwards. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you, Daniel. Pleasure.